HLSA. If you've made it this far, you're probably in pretty good shape. Today, we're going to be looking at body paragraphs. So we've already talked about intro paragraphs. We talked about broad openings and intro context and thesis statements and things like that. And now we're going to be moving on. We're going to be moving on to talk about body paragraphs and what makes a good academic paragraph. Good academic paragraphs have a point. There's evidence and analysis that happen, maybe some more evidence, and then finally, what I call response, but it's just kind of like where your argument moves forward. So I'm going to dig into a lot more detail about how to build paragraphs like that. I'm also going to do several other things, and you can check out the description for if you want to shortcut ahead to some of these, because there's a lot to talk about. How do I get evidence into paragraphs? That's something that people are concerned about. Like, how do I write paragraphs so that my evidence has the right kind of punctuation, things like that? That's going to be addressed. How do I use cognitive action verbs? These are huge. My writing philosophy is all about verbs and all about cognitive action verbs. They're verbs that show thinking, that demonstrate, like, you just have to have them for analysis, and varied syntax. Those things, people are concerned about those things. So I'll be addressing that. How do I pick good evidence? How do you know when you have the right evidence to further your argument or just have a strong paper? And then finally, how do I make sure I'm doing analysis? There's a lot of anxiety about, like, is this summary? Is it description? Or is it analysis? So we'll be looking at that as well. Here we go. Let's start with an example of what I feel is like a pretty good body paragraph. I wrote it. I feel it's pretty good. So pause the video if you want. Otherwise, I'll just dig into, like, well, what's going on? What's happening in this paragraph? What are the things that are happening in this body paragraph? First thing we've got, a clear topic sentence with some connection to the thesis. So you should be able to look at your paper from your thesis statement and then the topic sentence of each of your main paragraphs and kind of, have a fairly clear outline of what it is that you're doing in your paper. So from this sentence, to add depth to the theme of this transformative aspects of depression and social isolation, Murakami extends the metaphor of the landscape at death's door, populating this world with birds with razor-shaped sharp beaks that relentlessly scoop out Sukuru's flesh. So that's like a topic sentence. You can also see that there is some evidence in there, and there's also some analysis going on. So this pair format is not like, okay, it's dorky. It's totally dorky, right? We love pairs. It's a cool acronym. It's just something to help you remember that, like, these are the things you need to be doing in your paragraph. What else is going on here? Truncated quotations. Truncated. Don't think sentences. Think like phrases. Think the phrases that do the work that you want done. So in this particular paragraph, I have the things that I felt were most powerful or interesting, but they're also the things that I needed to move my argument forward. I'm talking about transformation. I'm talking about depression. And I'm talking about a metaphor that has to do with a landscape. So instead of just saying, he put these crazy, weird bird things in the landscape, I was able to use his exact quotation. And then I didn't do this throughout, but I do have like a little right there. It's not the most important thing. It is important, like, when you're done with your paper, to make sure, like, okay, have I done all those little things? Do I have a works cited that's okay? And do I have like MLA format or whatever format you're using? Page numbers are fine, and you don't have to, for this paper, it's not a research paper. There shouldn't be 50 different sources of information. If I was in high school and I had to write this paper, there would be one, and it would be the book, because that is, you can do a very strong paper that way, and it's not just a bunch of research. High density analysis, sparse summary, and this is the kind of thing where I'm going to dig into it a little bit more as I move forward in the video. So you want to concentrate on what is going to impact the reader. The whole thing, the whole analysis is, I noticed this, here's what it is, here's what it means, and this is what it does to the reader. And finally, at the end of the paragraph, there should be a sense of movement and development of the thesis. You don't need to, like, restate anything, but you do need to, like, take stock, let your reader be aware of what has happened, and then maybe start to move forward. Or maybe some kind of a, let's see, Murakami's description of this landscape of despair as a remote border on the edges of consciousness also serves as an apt description of the narrative landscape of the novel as a whole. So here you can say, I've taken everything I put together and I kind of like put it in a little ball and said, and it also might do this, or it also might mean this. So here's the pair format. So cool. PEAR. Notice that the E and the A, there's that, like, they could go in reverse order, or they could be, kind of intertwined, and they will be. But your point, you're saying for every paragraph in your essay, you can look through and say, like, have I done this? Is it clear from the first sentence of my paragraph what's going on? What's going to happen? What's going to happen in this paragraph? And then for your evidence, is it a quote? Is it a summary? Is it, what is it? But does it relate to your point? That's a good question. And then for analysis, is like, well, what does the evidence mean? You have to interpret your evidence for your reader. So does it tie back to your point? How? This is where you're doing reasoning. It's reasoning. It's good to have reasoning skills and be a reasonable person. And then finally, the response is like, so what? Where does it go? What's next? How does it connect? Where are we going with this paper? That's something it's hard, to have that, but it's something you'll build over time. Is like there's a sense of motion in your writing. There's a sense of we began here and we're moving in a direction, and you'll get there. You really will. So here's a goofy example. Here's a goofy example of the point, evidence, analysis, and response, just so it's like very clear. The point. What's the paragraph about? It's raining outside. Oh, okay. Where's my evidence? Well, according to Buzz Lightyear, a student at New Tech, it has been raining for several hours out there. I can't believe it. This water, it just keeps falling from the sky. It's goofy. But then here's the analysis. Well, based on this firsthand account, it helped me determine, yes, I was able to learn this. And moreover, the way that Mr. Lightyear answered the question got me thinking about the intensity of the rain. So it's not, well, it doesn't really matter. You get what I'm saying here? Response, I know that some parts of the country are experiencing some drought, but what's next? How long does it take? What does this mean for what's next? So, more sophisticated example, we can see that we have a point, evidence, analysis, and response, and there's some intertwining. So I have death's door right here is evidence, and birds with razor sharp beaks. But I've already, like, by naming it a metaphor of the landscape and talking about what it means, I've already begun the process of analysis, even in introducing the evidence, because it is defining. If you're defining, that's analysis. If you're saying this is a metaphor, well, that is an analytical activity because you are defining, you're naming. Paragraphs, silly, something to remember. Next two, I'm going to take together, and you might be disappointed with how I do it, but like otherwise, so towards the end of this video, it's going to be quite detailed about language, very, very detailed about language. And if I did that for this next part as well, this video would be, it would be another hour long. Because to answer these questions, I've created another video. I'm going to put a little thing up right there that you can go there if you want. It's the kind of thing, like, it's going to take some time, but it's going to pay off big time. So we have PEAR. We've got the same goofy pair format. It has a lot of different examples of possible sentences, some of them that could be kind of like thesis statements that are like, bigger statements. And then verbs, the verbs that I love so much. And syntax, I try to, like, use my biggest brain that I had available to me and say, if I was going to put everything that people needed to write really good literary analysis on one paper and then have one 1 hour long video to explain it, what would that look like? This is what it looks like. So if you're a freak and you just love it and you want to really learn how to write, just do it and copy it out. You can copy this whole thing out and you have it in your pocket. And then when your teacher's like, hey, where did you learn how to write? I made this thing. So I offer that to you. The rest of this video is going to have lots of good stuff too. Starting with, we did all these things. Now we're moving on to, how do I pick good evidence? Okay. Choosing your evidence, selecting your evidence from your text is a recursive process, which means it kind of like goes backwards and forwards. It's like, do I have my evidence, my thesis, my evidence, my thesis? my paragraphs, you're not done until you're done, and you're always refining and seeing how things work. So you got your thesis right there. You got supporting points and evidence, a couple different things that fit together and say, this is my thesis, this is what I'm going for. So quotations that support points I need to make. That's evidence you need to have in your paper. You need to have the evidence that proves your case. But also, maybe when you're thinking about your work, you don't want to think about that at all. Instead, you want to think about quotations that are freaking awesome. Just beautiful sentences, powerful moments, parts in the book where you were like, this is so good. I'm feeling this. I get it. I know what's going on. This is good stuff. Well, are those things different or are they stay the same? It depends on what your paper is, So maybe you're thinking, I need something to support a point I make it, but I like this is awesome quote. I want to say it. Well, change your thesis. It's your thesis. It's your paper, So it's totally fine having your entire paper driven. In fact, maybe it's better that way. Don't think about your thesis at top. Think about what you want to talk about. What matters most to you? What do you think is like worth digging into? And then it just kind of goes in a circle. So this is a freaking awesome quotation, but now I need it. Now I need it for my thesis because I changed my thesis. Okay, great. Well, yeah, they go back and forth, and then you can change your thesis, and it's all like it's your paper. So how do you pick good evidence? Evidence that I can analyze is good evidence. Conversely, good evidence is evidence that I can analyze. So it's recursive. It goes back and forth. It changes. So it's a mess. That's it. That's how you pick good evidence. The next part is here we go. How do I make sure that I'm doing actual analysis? All right, let's see what we can get into here. All right, so I wrote this. It's horrible. I hope you never read a book that has a sentence that is this dumb in it. But here it is. As they sat, Jeff unburdened his heart. Mimi, he said, this boo-boo wrecks my thumpy. That's from the text. That's the evidence from the text. This is a quotation from the text. Well, what am I going to do with it? So I'm going to teach you some pretty specific things for what you can do with it to build a sentence that does analysis, okay? And here's the system right here. We got this adjective, we got a domain-specific noun, and we got a cognitive action verb. So during this pivotal moment of dialogue, Jeff refers to his emotional pain as a boo-boo and his heart as his thumpy. The infantile diction reminds the reader of a core aspect of Jeff's character. He is emotionally immature, silly, but it does the work of analysis, and it does it in a pretty specific way. You have your evidence and you have your analysis. Evidence and analysis. Well, which is which? Can you tell which is which? Where's my evidence and where's my analysis? Well, there we go. Importantly, pivotal and emotional pain are both analysis because I'm defining. The author didn't tell me that that was a pivotal moment. I determined that that was a pivotal moment. So that's my analysis that's happening even as I introduce my evidence. Totally cool, totally healthy, something you should do. I'm going to take it a step further. This little format here is something I'm going to explain in a later slide. But this doesn't always have to be this. This can be a lot of different things. But in case this time, this is the. It's just the article or the phrase that introduces your sentences at the beginning of the sentence. So the, now we have an adjective. Adjectives are important. Adjectives are like, this is me saying what it is. So adjectives are analysis, not by themselves, but they're analysis. So an adjective is like infantile. The author didn't say it was infantile. I did. That's my, when I look at it, I'm like, that's infantile. That's analysis. So then I have, and see, I also used it, in the preceding sentence, pivotal moment, same way. It's an adjective that describes. Then I have these domain-specific nouns. Domain-specific nouns are nouns that are drawn from our world of literary nerds. And you're in that world, whether you like it or not. While you're in a class, you're in that world. So draw from that world of literary nerd language, dialogue, diction, character, metaphor. I'll give you a long list in the next slide. But you put those into action, and now you're doing analysis. And then next, most important, I love verbs. This is a simple one, reminds. But it shows that the work is doing something to the reader. The work is doing something. This infantile diction, the infantile diction reminds the reader of a core aspect of Jeff's character. So this little arrow here is really important as well, because it's a lot of times it's the reader. It could be the author. It could be other things that happen here, but it's the direct object that receives the action that happens. And so ultimately, the work of literary analysis is all about you drawing attention to naming specific choices, features, and devices, defining them, and isolating what you believe is their effect or meaning on the reader. At least that's how I see it. And I think that's how it becomes most interesting for you, maybe for your reader too. Here's a long list. A lot to take in here. A lot to take in. I'll go over it one at a time. So this, as you can see, this doesn't have to be this. It could be this example of, or Murakami's use of, or maybe nothing. You could just say bold phrasing. Or you could have a little introductory phrase there initially. In this novel, powerful syntax. I mean, that's not too much of a thing, but so the adjectives, you're drawing from just descriptions of everything. What does it mean? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it have to do with anything? So bitter, ugly, stark, clear, disturbing, secretive. You can see there's thousands of other words that you can draw from for your explaining what something means or what it is. And then you have your domain specific nouns that you're drawing from. Phrasing, tone, symbol, structure, paradox, illusion, sequence, passage, sentence, word, punctuation, comma, period, anything like that is drawn from our language. And if you think it's meaningful, I think periods are very meaningful. So you write a sentence where you talk about what does that period do to the reader. And then you have your cognitive action verbs. These are huge. What is the text doing? What does the text do? What does the passage do? What does the sentence do? Does it ask or emphasize? Does it highlight? Does it suggest? Does it enhance? Does it reverse? Does it mark? Mark is a good one. Mark is an underrated one. Not people use mark enough. But this passage marks an essential turning point in this character's blah, blah, blah. Does it reiterate? Does it create? Does it destate? Does it negate? So those are all the things that are possible for a sentence to do. I don't know how you learn this kind of stuff if you don't, if nobody teaches you this kind of stuff, because oh, that's what sentences can do. They do all these things. It's really interesting. And then we have the writers, the readers, the censors. So, and this is still confusing to you, and that's okay. Maybe it'll be a little clearer after this. So I drew from that list of things, and I made some sentences. Murakami's use of, what's the adjective? What is it like? Dreamlike. Cool. Dreamlike imagery. I get what that is. Did Murakami tell me that? No, he didn't say that's what it was. He just put it in the book. I'm telling you it's dreamlike imagery. And furthermore, I'm telling you that it destabilizes the relationship between fantasy and reality for the reader. You're doing analysis like that. When you write sentences like this, you're doing analysis. This is the specific language. And these sentences all happen to be simple sentences. There's other ways to write sentences, of course. If you want to, you can say that big thing with all the things. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But these all have active verbs, and they all have, look at the subjects. The subjects of the sentences are imagery, illusion, prose, Murakami. That's how you do it. How you do it is you put the work as the subject. You have some kind of verb that shows something happening, and then you say what it is that happens. I think that's it. I thought that this would be so much longer, but I think that's it for now. So let me know how that works out for you. I hope it's super helpful. I made a thing. It's a piece of paper. If you want it, let me know. I could probably put a link somewhere, but I don't know if you want that. But it's basically this times 2. It's just more language. I don't know if that's helpful, just to have more language. But look at this. We did it all. How do you turn this thing off? Okay. All right, what is this? Okay.